Hello everyone, this is Kim from Kimberbell Designs, and this is Tuesday Tips with Kim. I'm so sorry, Lori's not here today. She's actually still in Houston for the Quilt Festival, and she'll be back tomorrow, so I'm filling in for her for Tuesday Tips with Lori, but you've got Kim today. So I try to think of, what kind of tip could I give you today that would work for those who sew as well as those who embroider, and that would be binding. I think binding is like one of the top things that people get nervous about, and maybe they have finished the quilt and it's sat around for even years because it hasn't been bound. If that is you, give me a thumbs up. Or if binding makes you nervous, give me a thumbs up. But it's not too bad, and I have a few tricks and tips to share with you on binding. So first thing is this. How much binding do you need? So when I have a quilt or a table runner or something that needs to be bound, I measure all four sides, add them up, and then add another 10 inches. That's kind of my rule of thumb for how much binding I need for a quilt or any type of project. How wide do you cut it? For me, I love the 2 1/4 inch wide strips, just like this. A lot of people use like 2.5 inches, and that's perfectly fine too. But for me, my go-to is 2 1/4 inches wide. Okay, next tip is, how do you sew the binding strips together? Do you just sew with a 1/4 inch seam? Not quite. What we're going to do is actually sew on a 45-degree angle. So to attach the binding strips one to another, I've got a couple strips here. And what I would do is I'm going to form like a perpendicular corner here, and I'm going to put right sides together just like that. And then what I want to do is sew from the top left corner down to the bottom right corner. And to help me remember that, I'm just going to take my my corner, my top right corner, and press it over and just do a finger press at an angle. And then if I sew right on that angle, so I'm going to open it up now. I don't know if you can see that crease very well, but now I'll remember, oh, okay, that's the way I'm going to sew. And I might even just put a pin in there just to hold it in place, and then take it to my sewing machine and sew from corner to corner. So I'm going to first do that. Let's see. Okay. And then all I have to do, of course, is take my pin out. I'm going to cut a 1/4 inch beyond. And voila, you've got now this, your two pieces sewn together. So you continue to do that for your entire strip of binding. Once you've done that, then you're going to take it over to your ironing board and just press it in half with the wrong sides together, and now you're ready to add this to your quilt. All right, so I've already got some quilts ready for you to take a look at. So now I've got this huge roll of binding, right? How I start, and this is just personal preference, is I like to start on one of the sides, one of the long sides, and I usually measure, just with my eyes, about 10 inches. And I start at that 10-inch point. So I'm going to lay the raw edge of the binding against the raw edge of my quilt. And if I were to have a 10-inch tail, I'm going to start right about there. And I'm going to do it with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I've already got my machine set up for that. I'm just going to sew right along here at a 1/4 inch. And I'm going to actually back stitch it just a little bit. And the other thing I want to remember is actually to stop at a 1/4 inch before you get to the end here. So to help me with that, I'm just going to take my little ruler and I'm going to measure over that 1/4 inch right there. And then I'm going to stick a pin in right there so it reminds me, stop. Don't go any further than that. Okay, so we're going to just continue along. I'm getting closer to that pin, so I'm going to slow it down just a bit. I don't want to run over the pin. And then I'm going to back stitch it just once. Okay, remove my pin. Okay, now this is really important. When you get to the corner here, what I'm going to do, let's see, is I'm going to flip this up. So flip it up and crease it at an angle. Let's do that one more time. I'm going to flip it up, crease it at an angle, and now you've got a big tail on top. Flip that tail down. And then if you'd like, pin it. Okay, let's do that one more time. So I got to my end. I have a 1/4 inch left. I'm going to flip it up, my tail up, crease it at that angle, then bring it back down over the top of it and pin. And then you just start sewing at a 1/4 inch again. Now some people like to start at a 1/4 inch and then go beyond. I actually personally like to start right from the top and go a 1/4 inch. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, I'm getting closer to the end, so I'm going to mark my 1/4 inch right there with a pin so that I know I won't go beyond that. Let's see, right there. That's where I want to go. Okay, I'm going to back stitch it once. Okay. And as you remember, you're going to take your tail, flip it up, crease it at an angle, just like that. Take the tail from the top and move it over to the bottom, and then again sew. So you'll continue that on all 4 sides. Now the other thing that kind of stresses people out, understandably, is being able to join your ends. So here's an example of that. So I've got a little trick to show you. So you're getting closer to the end, you've sewn all the way around, you've got a tail here and you've got a tail here. What I like to do is stop sewing, about 15, 20 inches between the 2 ends, and then remove this from my machine. Then what I do is I lay this down and I take my bottom tail. Remember you had that 10 inches extra? I'm going to lay it down flat like this, and then I'm going to take my top tail and lay it over the top of it. But let's figure out how we're going to get that to match up so it looks like the rest. What I'm going to do is actually, I'm just going to cut off just a little bit of this extra on the outside here and open it up. And you know what this means? This is 2 1/4 inches wide because that's what I cut it originally, right? Well, if I look at where this overlaps, let's look really carefully at where this overlaps, okay? Do you see right there we've got a fold, right there is the end. I'm going to let that overlap, and I am actually going to take this piece, and since it's a 2 1/4 inches, you could do this with a measuring tape, but I might as well just do this with what I have here and cut off any extra. Okay, so if I didn't use this piece, what I would do is you lay your tail down this way, you lay your tail over the top this way, and you measure a 1/4 inch. Let's move that just a little bit. You measure 2 1/4 inches, whatever the width of your binding was. So if it was 2 1/2 inches, I'm going to measure 2 1/2 inches over. But this is 2 1/4 inches, so I'm going to start right here with my measuring tape, measure 2 1/4 inches, and cut off any extra. Does that make sense? Now, again, because I had some extra fabric to work with and I didn't have my measuring tape here, I could simply just cut off a chunk because it was extra and just use that as my 2 1/4 inch ruler, so to speak. But this time, if you don't have that, you would just use a measuring tape. Okay, so I've got 2 1/4 inches. Now what do? Well, I'm going to open this up flat. Remember what we did when we first joined our pieces together? And I'm going to open up this flat. And I'm going to put them perpendicular to each other, right like this. Okay, remember at the very beginning, when we were putting our pieces, our sections together for the binding, we made a little perpendicular right angle here. boom, boom. And what did we do? We folded the top right corner to the left and press, okay? And then I'm going to open it up and I'm going to stick a pin in it. Now another fun idea, actually Jeanette from our office said what she likes to think about is that she says, okay, what am I cutting off? What do I want to keep and what do I want to get rid of? And that's how she knows what angle to do it at. So for her, she says, okay, I want to keep this and this. So she's going to have her angle go this way, and this is what is left behind it. You get rid of it. I thought that was a clever idea too. So once again, let's join our strips together. We take our top one and right sides together, take our bottom one and form this perpendicular angle here, okay? And take the right corner and fold it and just give it a good little finger pressing so you remember which way you're going to sew, and you actually sew directly on that fold. And if I want to remember or keep that together and then remember that as well, I might stick a pin in there and then you sew directly on that fold line. Again, this is what you want to keep and that is what you want to get rid of. So let's try that at an angle. And I probably want to double check it just in case I messed up there. So I'm going to take a pin now and I'm going to open it up and look at that. You've got it all sewn together just like you wanted. So at that point, you're going to cut off 1/4 inch beyond the seam line. You probably want to iron that flat. You open up your seam and press that and then check this out. Now it fits perfectly on my quilt. I can go back to my 1/4 inch seam here, starting where I left off, and sew. Back up. There we go. I'm going to sew the rest of this binding on. You will never know where it started and stopped. Almost done. Does anyone have any questions on binding, or if you might have some of your tips and tricks and ideas, we'd love to hear them. Okay, so there you go. Now all I have to do is just fold my binding over to the back, and just with a little slip stitch and a matching thread and a needle, I can just tack that down. And look how pretty these corners are. Ooh. Tack that down, and you've got a really pretty corner there. Kind of, sort of. There we go. So does anyone have any questions?
Well, they're not showing up, but we'll answer them when you post.
We'll take a look, yeah. So after this video goes live, or well, I guess it is live right now, right? So after this is finished filming, then we'll go back and take a look at any questions you have, tips or tricks. We'd love to hear from you. So thanks for joining me today, and next Tuesday, Lori will be back. Thanks.